A new HBO miniseries, Show Me a Hero, looks back at the struggle over public housing and desegregation in the 1980s. The city of Yonkers, New York, was faced with a federal court order to build low-income housing in white neighborhoods.
The six-part series follows then-Mayor Nick Wasicsko, who faced fierce opposition from residents during city council votes.
Affordable housing portion of the judge's order to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court has refused.
Hail all of it, you coward!
Roll call. Roll call.
Mayor Wasicsko.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Spallone.
No.
Majority Leader Cola.
No.
Minority Leader Longo.
No.
No. Here at the table is executive producer David Simon, an Emmy winner, and Oscar-winning director Paul Haggis. Both join us at the table. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
This is a powerful piece. It's a six-part series on HBO. And this is a thing that surprised me. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know anything about this story. And when I think of desegregation, I think of the 60s in Alabama and Georgia. Why did you want to tell the story, David?
This is happening everywhere, and it continues to happen now. I mean, you go a couple towns north on the Hudson up to Terrytown.
Just Westchester.
And, and still in Westchester, and the fight is going on right now. Same rhetoric, same demagoguing, same fears being invoked. We're not very good at sharing in this country. Physical space, geography, economic opportunity. Everywhere that this moment happens, is just repetitive. So the piece still stands.
It's a great story. Paul, what pulled you into this? Was it working with David? Was it the story?
Actually, it was David. It was my agent sent me a script. Actually called me and said, we've got a couple of projects for you to think about. And the third thing they came to was David Simon has a miniseries. And I said, say yes.
You say yes,
and they said,
exactly.
Great, send me this. We'll send you the script and we'll talk about it. I said, no, say yes, and then send me the script.
But you said that, why?
I've admired his work forever, from the corner through The Wire. I mean, The Wire is one of the greatest series of all time, but through Generation Kill. While I was doing In the Valley of Allah, he was doing another his thing about the Iraq War. And so we've been in sync, just not together, for a long time.
What kind of stories do you want to tell, David?
I prefer that it sort of contribute to the argument. I think there are arguments that we need to have in this country, and they need to be brought forward, and they need to progress as arguments. So it's nice to be entertaining, but at some point that's all you're doing, then I feel like, shame on me.
This subject matter is very difficult, I think, for a lot of Americans to even discuss. So going to HBO about this idea, how hard was it to sell?
Well, we actually optioned the book 14 years ago. And the reason that they kept renewing the option, even when other projects got in front of it, was sadly the racial dynamic in this country, because we have a hard time talking about it, because we've failed to address it. It remains constant. The piece is as relevant today as it was when we optioned the book, sadly. I mean, you'd hope that it wouldn't be, but it is.
Because racism in urban America continues to exist.
Well, yeah, and we haven't solved these problems of hypersegregation.
And you are not afraid to talk about race. You either, Paul. Neither one of you are afraid to tackle race. So many people makes them uncomfortable. They're afraid of being branded a racist, or they just want to close it off. Why do you want to get it out there? And this story in particular, this true story.
I think it's one of the fundamental problems for the next century. I mean, we solve this, or we don't solve the American city.
Exactly.
And ultimately, this is an argument we have to have. The reason that I wanted to do this piece with Paul is not only the context of his work, but and the fact that he has addressed this before in his own work, but also, let's face it, it's a piece about public housing and desegregation. It sounds like a room clearer until you understand the story of Nick Wasicsko and the narrative behind it. But because of the content, I really needed a director who could come in and be, a little more cinematic, a little more elegant with the material. The camera had to have a little more emotion than I normally do.
When that person wasn't available, then finally they found me.
and then you found a pretty good actor as the mayor.
Oscar Isaacs.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Tell us about the mayor, Paul.
Well, Nick Wasicsko is a very flawed character, and I think that's one of the things that we wanted to show, that happens. These are human beings who are fighting his fights, and these are people who have this imperfect urge to serve, but they are imperfect. And this man comes in on the wrong side of this issue, and then realizes he has to step up and do something and lead. And
yeah, he had his moment. There was a moment where he had to step up, and he did. And the fact that he's an ordinary guy, that it's quotidian, matters more to me in some ways than looking like his. The thing I don't buy anymore is, if we elect the right guy, the great men of history, that'll save us. I think our problems are systemic, and we're going to have to solve them sort of as people.
Public housing has been mismanaged in this city
I
for
read
this country.
something really interesting, David, that you spoke about in an interview in a print magazine, and it was something that I didn't even realize, but you talked about during the New Deal and how public housing was really born to help people, white families in particular,
Absolutely.
to get back on their feet. But yet, when we talk about now helping people of color getting back on your feet, there's a double standard,
Right. All
it
of a
seems
sudden,
like.
it's, why are we doing public housing? But the truth is, the origins of this segregated America happened not by chance, not by random patterns of housing. The federal government stepped in with redlining on FHA loans and with the way they did public housing and where they placed it. It was a plan to hyper-segregate our society.
And warehouse them and stack them. And
Yeah, I
towers.
mean, there were terrible mistakes made with public housing in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in terms of isolating the poor. And what they found out is that, with scattered site housing and with careful management, this program actually helps people out of poverty.
But that's common sense. We don't value common sense in politics.
No, we don't.
Yeah, we don't.
Sadly.
Well, I think this is the beginning of a unique collaboration. Paul said that if you wanted to do something about the history of footwear, he would be
Well,
in.
the next thing is an 8-part series on tax reform. I think
And
8 parts, maybe. And I don't know what actor we're going to get to take the lead in that. Maybe Oscar. I don't know.
There's your
Thank you,
guy.
David. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. I watched the first episode. I'm hooked.